Hello everybody, this is Fun Police, and I am making this video just a few hours after a balance patch has been revealed. There's some really big changes in this, most notably the Autocannon combo, or as it's also known, the baby combo, is being destroyed. It's gone from the game after this patch goes live. And then it's got some other changes that are kind of interesting, but I just wanted to go over this and get this video out real quickly. So without further ado, let's jump into the first change. The 15cm autocannon itself is receiving a bit of a rework. It is gaining +1 defense. However, when you deploy a unit, it's only dealing 1 damage instead of the normal 2. In terms of combo uses, this makes the 15cm autocannon pretty much non-existent because you essentially have doubled the number of units required to be played in order to like OTK with it, and that's just not going to be like an actual thing. However, in terms of like just playing this as an aggro card, this is honestly really strong now. A 3 credit, 1 operation cost, 3/3 artillery piece is way above curve compared to pretty much every other example. It's massive. It's able to kill pretty much every early game drop, and it's able to survive a lot of the early game removal. The difference between 2 and 3 health is quite massive, especially with stuff like United We Stand and the Panzer 35T being such common cards. That 1 extra health has made autocannon into a premium statted artillery piece, and then it even has the benefit of turning your lower cost deploy units into extra damage. I think this card is honestly going to become a staple of many aggressive decks because you can just play this on curve and you'll be very happy with just such a high statted artillery unit. And then if you're playing this late game, you can combo it up with a couple other units and get like 2 or 3 damage just by playing them. So it's a change that is changing the purpose of the card, but one that I think honestly makes the card very strong. Then we move on to Rush Production, which has been completely reworked. This is the card that absolutely kills any chance of a combo deck being used with autocannon. Now, the change has been made. When you deploy a German unit this turn, it gets +2, -1. So essentially, your German units, after you play a Rush Production, are going to have +2 attack, but -1 health. This is a very interesting change, but one that I think is also actually quite powerful. The reason being is that Germany has a lot of cheap blitz tanks, stuff like the Panzer II-A, the Panzer 35T, and other examples that, you know, really benefit from that extra damage and don't really care about their health because generally you're looking to just kind of kill people anyway. And Rush Production does that cheaply and without much condition. That's one of the biggest things, is that I compare this a lot to something like Blitzkrieg, which is the 3 credit, your units in the front line get +3 attack and operate for 1 less. Rush Production doesn't hit nearly that hard as Blitzkrieg can. However, not only is it cheaper, but it also does not require you to have the front line. So you're able to play units out and have them, you know, in the support line, but still get the stat buffs, whether that means you can set up for a future turn, or you're just pushing the damage directly from hand. There's a variety of things. I mostly like this because it's more flexible than Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg is a very foundational finisher. However, Rush Reduction can be used in emergencies to help trade down. Like if the enemy has a really big swordfish, you could play this and then play a Panzer 35T, and you'd have a 4-1 Blitz tank operating for free. That could be a very efficient way to remove a swordfish that threatens to run away with the game. It still has good finishing potential also, I think. Being able to play out 2 or 3 blitz tanks that are otherwise not going to do a whole lot and then turning them into credible damage could be quite good. And I think overall that means that I expect Rush Production to be a good consideration for something like a fast Heinz deck. Then we start getting on to the reworks. Carrier cover has been completely reworked. It is now 1 credit, and then it has choose 1. Your fighters get +1/+1, or move into the front line if possible. So this completely reworks how carrier cover worked. Before, carrier cover was primarily 3 credits to bounce an enemy bounce a unit. That was pretty much its really the only real purpose it had. Or you sometimes used it as a ramp card, but not really because it was so expensive. And now Carrier Cover is a fighter support card. Within the US, they do have a fair amount of fighters that are quite good at working in the front line. The best example is the P-39 Area Cobra, which is a 4-credit 3/4 air fighter that has essentially heavy armor 2 against ground targets. So that's I think where the move them into the front line is intended to be used. Although I don't think that there's enough support or enough there to work with that. I think, however, the bigger effect or the stronger effect right now is giving your fighters +1/+1. Such a wide board-based buff for 1 credit could be potentially quite strong, and it's not restricted to any nation. So you're able to use, like, say, British fighters or Japanese fighters alongside this. And I think that's where Carrier Cover probably will see play, is using it in an allied for an air deck. For example, the British-US air deck that has been kicking around in the metagame for a little while, I think could really consider Carrier Cover. Now, granted, they may have to change their deck a little bit, but it is potentially strong enough, acting as almost like a close air support in a manner, and I think that is actually quite strong enough to see play. However, outside of a British-US air deck, I don't see this seeing a lot of play right now, although it isn't a bad card, I don't think, for future air support. Then we move on to Fortified Position. It's having its cost reduced to 1, and its text has been changed to pin an enemy unit. If it is in the front line, it retreats. So Fortified Position is now in line with many of the other pin cards. Being 1 credit, it is relatively cheap, and this does arguably have a decent effect to it. Being able to retreat an enemy unit out of the front line could open the way for you to take the front line. It gives me ideas of maybe trying to use this in some deck that cares about the front line, like the US French deck that I posted a while ago. Link is in the description for that, in terms of like maybe working it in there. And we do have in French possession Phony War, which is a very good draw engine that allows you to kind of use combo cards a little easier. My one problem with this is that it's kind of a low impact card, and I have problems justifying running these in large amounts, because if the enemy has multiple units in the front line, Fortified Position isn't going to be able to help you get the front line as much. So it's kind of specific in what I think it can do, and I think that overall it just will end up as a little bit too niche to see play, although I definitely think it is better than this previous version. Then we have another French card. The French 75 has gotten a rework. It is now 4 credits, up from 3, but it is now a 3/3 artillery piece, and its text has been reworked. If the enemy controls the front line, this unit can only attack targets there. In terms of an artillery piece, this is kind of standard now. It is a little bit above curve compared to something like the 25 pounder, but it does have that drawback of it can only hit the front line if the enemy controls it. Although, to be honest, that's not maybe the biggest of problems. Overall, I think the French 75 has been improved, but I do think it also has not really gotten into a place where I'd put it in a constructed deck. I think it's good in draft, probably. It's at least decent in draft now. But otherwise, I'm not seeing a whole lot with this. Then we get on to the change that I'm probably most excited for, the Henschel HS-126. It's been completely reworked in terms of its deployment effects. So it has the same stats, but its deployment has changed to give a friendly tank +1/+1 for each unit type in the same line. So if it's in the support line, if a tank is in the support line, it'll count all units in the support line, and that's what the HS does to give it stats. And I think overall, this is actually a really good card for close or combined arms. The Henschel HS on its own is +2/+2 because it itself is a fighter, and then it also counts the tank. So you're getting at least +2/+2 if you have a tank in the support line off of the HS. And it very quickly can be +3/+3 or even +4/+4. And that is quite strong. I think that this is a really nice card for combined arms, and I'm very excited to put it in the deck and see how it performs, because having redundancy on being able to do the combined arms synergy makes the deck much more consistent, and I think that's going to be actually a massive buff to the deck. I'm very excited for this. Maybe expect the deck tech to come around for that as we revisit it. But moving on, we have the Martyr, which has been reworked. The Martyr, which was previously one of the crappiest specials in the game, has been reworked into, honestly, a pretty good looking one. Its cost has been reduced by 1, going down to 3 credits. It has also lost a defense point, becoming a 3-2 as opposed to a 3-3. However, its text has been reworked to be much more powerful. When a friendly unit destroys an enemy unit, draw a random unit. And this is notably from your deck. And that is honestly quite powerful. It reminds me similar to something like the 22nd Infantry or the Panzer 38T. Now, you do have to work a little bit by actively trading units, so it's not going to come down as quickly and passively do that. However, it is able to draw multiple cards, and it is a tank itself in Germany. So those are good benefits, and maybe this could fit into something like Fast Heinz. However, maybe it also fits into something like a mid-range deck and using stuff like the bigger blitz units or something like that in order to make it work. Also notably works with destruction effects. So if you're able to maybe use something like the Nebelwerfer to ping off an enemy unit, you'll draw a unit off of it. So I think there's a fair amount of flexibility with this, and I think the Martyr is definitely a lot better now. I'm happy to see something like this made into an actual card now. Then we have the Yak III, which is going down a credit cost, so it's 3 credits compared to 4. It is losing 2 defense. However, it is now a French exile, meaning France can run it, and the Soviets can also. It also has deployment, gains +1/+1 and ambush if you control a non-Soviet unit. So this is, if you control a unit that is not Soviet, it is a 4/3 ambush for 3 credits. That's honestly not a bad stat line. That's difficult to trade into and can naturally be effective against like bombers, but also is just generally difficult to trade into if the enemy does not have removal. It's a nice little buff, I think, for Soviet air. Just having a good 3-credit plane has been something that most decks are looking for, and the Soviets, I think, have really been yearning for a 3-drop plane, and I think that the Yak III does a good job in fulfilling that purpose. I don't think it's enough to definitely make Soviet air like super viable. I think we definitely have some ways to go in there, but it's, I think, a good rework in terms of giving a 3-credit plane that fits well into the Soviet air archetype. We also have another card that fits into Soviet air now, Veteran Pilots. It has had its effect reworked, so it is now choose one, give a Soviet air unit +1/+2, or that Soviet air unit gets immune this turn. So you're either able to buff it up with a modest buff, or you're able to make it immune to damage for the turn and maybe allows you to trade in. I think it's overall a nice little buff. I think it's definitely a bit better than it previously was. +2 health is quite a lot, and it's especially on a 1-credit card. Can very quickly turn a modestly sized threat like something like the Yak III into a much scarier threat. This would become a 5/5 ambush plane with just 1 veteran pilots and its deployment effect activating. So there's definitely some use there, and it can also be immune to damage, so you're able to, potentially ram this into like some important threat and not lose your air unit. I think it's definitely better and will fit into a Soviet air deck, although I don't think either of these changes really make Soviet air super meta. It's a good first step. Then the final card, Royal West Kents. It is going down 1 credit cost and losing 1 defense. I gotta admit, I think this change is just pointless. Royal West Kents is a very bad card. Its effect is extremely niche, and it is quite expensive for that niche effect. You have to have your enemy attack into your high health guards while the Kents are on the board in order to have its effect do anything, and that benefit is usually a couple extra points attack on a guard. there's just a lot better ways to do something like this. You could run like naval support, Coldstream Guards, which is a naval support on a body. You have Rule Britannia. You even have First London Brigade, which is now the same cost, but it just passively gives all of your ground units +2 attack. And the Royal West Kents, I don't think we'll see any play. It honestly at least should have been a 2/5, so it's at least somewhat decent to removal, but I don't see this. Maybe if it was like a 3-credit 2/5, maybe, but even then, it needed a rework in its effect. So I don't expect this to really see any play at all. Even as a new player, just get the First London Brigade or go into naval support. Don't try to set up Royal West Kents. So overall, interesting patch. One deck has been killed, but the cards that have been changed honestly seem extremely powerful. We have a variety of buffs to smaller archetypes, most notably Soviet and US Air. We also got some French buffs, which are always good to see. France just needs a lot of buffs. And then we also got some stuff for like combined arms, which I'm personally most excited about. Overall, I think it's going to be a decent patch. I like most of the changes in here, although I do think that we probably could have seen like a small British air nerf, something like maybe looking at the Elite Spitfire and toning that back a little bit could have been nice, because that deck is still very popular and I think needs a little bit of knocking down. There's also maybe some other changes I would have preferred, like I would have preferred maybe alongside carrier cover, we see another card rework to fit into like a US Air deck. Maybe one of the fighters could get some changes to fit better in this archetype. But otherwise, that is all I got for today. Just a quick little video going over the changes. If you haven't subscribed, make sure to like and subscribe because deck techs are coming not only for Battle of the Bulge, but now for this balance patch. Otherwise, that is all I got. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.